It's the rare full colour jade. She exists. It's that time of the year, folks. It's the time to wrap up everything I read last year. Though it's a little different this time, because I'm not going to talk about every single book I read last year in the same way, because I don't feel the need to waste your time on trad books that are anything less than excellent. They get enough traction. This is a channel that is primarily about indie books and indie writing, so it's just indie books this time, and that doesn't really cut out very many. As per last year, no DNFs are included, no sponsors, just me talking about books that I read, some of which I loved, some of which I didn't, but most of which I did. Welcome to Reads of 2025. So fair warning, this video is probably like way longer than the one I made last year, because I read a lot more this year, and it might not look like it because I'm not being dwarfed by paperbacks this time, but that's mainly because I found a way to read ebooks that doesn't hurt my brain, and I've actually delved into audiobooks this year. What's also cool is that this year I actually kept a full reading tracker in my bullet journal. Spoilers, this isn't actually all of it. So I can go through in chronological order. In terms of how many more books I read this year, last year I think I read 11 to 13 books off the top of my head, I'm not sure. This year I read 29. So, yeah, strap in. Not all of these will be talked about. I think 3 or 4 were trad pubs, so you're looking at about 25, but of all of these books, 26 of them came from writers that I've not read before, which is awesome, and of these, 13 of them are 5-star reads. So we got some really good stuff lined up, and in a surprise to no one, this is going to be majority horror, so horror readers, this one's for you. First one on the list was a paperback. It is Benjamin Langley's Guy Fawkes 2, A Dream of Demons. I read the first book in this trilogy last year. This is a historical horror, top 3, top 5 easily of 2025. It's a really good book. It's hard to get into much because spoilers. Suffice to say that I think this is probably the strongest book of the trilogy. I mean, don't get me wrong, the entire trilogy is great, but this I think is probably my favourite of the 3. The pacing is great, there are surprises everywhere, it's got that Benjamin Langley inventiveness. I mean, I'm a big fan of horror, I'm a big fan of his fic. This was always going to be a winner. 5 out of 5. Very, very easily. Oh boy, I did not think about where I was going to put anything. My desk is a mess. In a surprise to no one. Second book I read this year, this was one I took a big pun on, and it was worth it. It's another paperback, and it's a big one. This is Annihilation 1 by Jess Moon and Mandy Russell. The Albertine Axiom is structured a bit oddly, because it's sort of one big overarching series. It's sort of trilogy based. This is the first book of the Annihilation trilogy, but it's technically the 4th book in the series because Proliferation comes first. And I haven't read that, and you should bear that in mind when I talk about this book. That's on me, I did know this going in. So this book is listed as emo fantastical hope punk. As a reader, it basically reads like a sort of modern epic fantasy. I mean, I'm not a fantasy reader, I've been very open about that at various different stages, that fantasy generally isn't my bag, so taking a punt on this was basically because Annihilation sounded pretty good. You have a massive cast in this book, and 2 main POV characters being Lily and Sid. And you see a lot of the world and a lot of different people and a lot of different things. It's a very sweeping sort of a book with a lot of colourful characters. If you like character-driven fantasy stories, just, get this book. I mean, again, I read this, back in February, so my memory of it is a little bit hazy. I mean, I'm always going to be a hard sell on something that's this long. I want to say it's 541. You know what, let's check since I've literally got it in my hand. 425, I'm apparently a liar. In any case, that's pretty long by my standards. I was always going to be a hard sell on that. And while for like 90% of this book the pacing is great, there are a few stretches where you do feel the length a bit, and there are some things stylistically that I don't love. But, you know, this is me being A, incredibly picky, and B, not a fantasy reader, and C, not a long book enthusiast, so make of that what you will. That's just me. This book is great. I really liked it, but I didn't love it. So 4 out of 5. I should probably have read Proliferation first. Maybe that would make it a 5. Maybe it's just on me for that. The next one, this was my first audiobook ever. This was There Ought to Be Shadows by Chrissy K. Williams. And this is, I guess, magic realism? I'm not quite sure what genre to put this in, but I've seen it badged as that. And one thing I learned reading via audiobook for this one is that I process information via audiobook very differently to how I do on ebook or on paperback. I mean, they're all completely different things. As far as I'm concerned, I process the information very differently across those three things. Audiobook is completely unique, though, in a very different sense. In the sense that audiobooks activate my composer brain big time. So the big point for me to mention first is that this book is written beautifully and the narrator is excellent. I think it's particularly interesting how some social issues are framed and how they're talked about without being too, I'm going to beat you over the head with my mallet of social justice now, enjoy, because, I mean, let's be real, we're all tired of that. And I'm really glad that's not done here, because it's the sort of book where you could end up with that very easily. And it's not, it's just a solid story told, for want of a better word, authentically, I guess. It's a very sort of genuine read. It has a touch of almost time travel. There's a whole sort of sub-theme about courage and bravery and facing your fears and all of that sort of stuff, which is, I didn't expect to get in this book, and it was interesting how it was handled. I really appreciated it. I thought it was an interesting element to a story that is somewhat of a murder mystery. I don't know, there's a lot in this book, and a lot that's quite tangled and quite complicated, and it's good. The one thing I would say is there is one inconsistency that really bugged me. When it gets to the point where I'm really enjoying listening to the audiobook, that comes up and I have to put the entire thing down. I think it would be disingenuous for me not to knock a star off it. Watching this writer, she's good. This next book on the list, I'm sure you've probably heard of this one by now. This one won the SSBA in the horror category this year. This is You Will Speak for the Dead by R.A. Busby. And this book is amazing. This book is top 3 for the year, easily, not even close. Like, it would be insane to think it wouldn't be top 3. This is a very short book. This is like, it's like 92-page ebook or something like that. It's a body horror. It's also it's a grief horror as well. A fun fact, I'd actually not read body horror particularly before this. Again, because this book is so short, it's really hard to say much without spoilers. But yeah, this book was super emotional for me to read in a way where I'm just not really quite sure why. It's one of those where if it gets me that emotional and it's that subconscious, that's the mark of some great writing. And it is written really well. It's a beautifully written book, it's a great story. If it hadn't won the SSBA, because I mean that's how I heard about it, was in the SSBA, and if it hadn't won I would have been genuinely gobsmacked. I mean, there are some amazing books in the horror SSBA, there are more on this list, trust me. But that one was just so good, and I'm so happy it won, so deserving. 5 out of 5, top 3 of the year. Our next one is the first book I ever pre-ordered, and it's another paperback. It's a tiny paperback. It's this one. This is Scott J. Moses' Our Own Unique Affliction. And this is a vampire grief horror. This is sort of bizarre as a short read because it's a short read that almost doesn't feel like one. Because it's written in this really interesting way where it just doesn't rush, it takes its time. It will take as much time as it wants. It's written... It's not the slow... It's sort of slower pace. Sort of not. When you think about how much happens in this book, it's really not slow paced, but it almost feels like it is. For something that is quite, well, very supernatural in the sense that it's vampires and how vampires live in the sort of real world, basically. It's a very gritty and grounded story. The characters are great. It's beautifully, beautifully written. It's kind of just made me want to read more vampire books. It's made me want to write vampires as well, and I know it's bad to say, but basically ever since Twilight I've been pretty turned off vampires because for a really long time vampires have been so influenced by that, and for this to be something so completely and utterly different, it's just really refreshing. This is ace. This is 5 stars without a doubt. This is great. And, you know, from one amazing author, an amazing book, and one horror to the next, are you getting a theme here? It's more Benjamin Langley. It's the conclusion to the Guy Fawkes trilogy. This is a diabolical plot, again, historical horror. This was the book I was sort of semi-afraid of in the trilogy, in the sense that it's somewhat of a travelling book. Protagonist Guy Fawkes ends up in a lot of different places, a lot of different countries. And, you know, I've read a lot of books like that over the years where there's a lot of travelling, and it's... Let's just say this is the only book I can name where that's executed well, and it's not just executed well, it's executed really well. Like, it's genuinely impressive how well this is done. And, you know, that's before we get on to characters and plots and the real true nature and knots of conspiracy, and the quiet tragedy is just ramped up in this book. That's one thing that the Guy Fawkes trilogy hasn't had quite so much of in the same way as other Benjamin Langley reads, is usually there's a lot of quite quiet tragedy. You get more of it here, and, you know, I just love that. I really do. And it's all there. There's a lot of what's left spoken, what's left unspoken, and the one man just really deserved better, Langley. You know who I'm talking about. I'm not happy about it. It's a great conclusion to the trilogy. It's a great book in its own right. Langley doesn't miss. Next up, we got a very fun book. This is a real genre blend. This is The Ocean Hugs Hard by Eric Avedissian. It's quite different to anything else I've read from Avedissian. It's much quieter, it's much more... It sort of feels very deliberate, this book. It feels like... It's one of those that you almost feel you can't quite appreciate on a first read. Again, bear that in mind with this one. I almost feel like on a second read, you really see how clever this book is, because it's not one of those books that thinks it's clever but it isn't. It's a clever book and it knows it. And I think a second read, I'd maybe realise that more as a reader as well. This follows main character Harmon, who is a certifiable asshole. He is a journalist, and it sort of follows him trying to follow this story sort of outside of his job. He's been told to drop it, and he's like, no, because I have a personal tie to the story, I'm going to keep doing it. And it's pretty clear it's not going to end well for him very early. But the way in which it doesn't end well is not the one that I would expect. It's not really the one that I saw coming. And while it's sort of less bad, it actually felt way more unfair. And I really like that. I really like the grittiness of the story. Even though it's a bit mad and a bit wacky and kind of insane at points. The fact that there's this grounded, gritty, just almost humdrum vibe to it at points is really cool. All that said, it did feel like it dragged a little bit, and actually kind of a lot in places. Like, there were a couple of points where it felt like there were some things that could have been cut. Again, maybe I'm being unfair in the sense that if I read it again, maybe I'll get that better. In the sense, because this book is clever and it knows it, and that's as much of a blessing as it is a curse. It's one of those that I really wanted to love, but it just doesn't quite hit that mark for me. It's a 4, not a 5, but if I have a Destiny and if it does anything like this again, you bet your ass I'm buying it. This next one's a little tricky. You know, I was raised under the adage of, if you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything. This is Static by Stacey L. Pearson. This is a sort of small town horror. Okay, the only thing I am willing to say about this book is that the concept's pretty cool. I'm just going to give it a 1, and we're going to move straight on. And we're going to move on to one of the best books of the year, actually. This is... I don't speak Spanish. It will be very evident in a second. Terra at Tierra de Cobra by Michael Merriam. This is, I guess, historical horror. It's sort of also a western, so it's also got some steampunk in it. This one's really sort of interesting because it has this classic feel in terms of, you know, it's clearly a western and it has some very clear influences from famous western films and all of these things. And there's some, like, pretty classic action and whatnot involved in all of that. But it also feels very modern with what it does with these things. It takes just a fresh view on these things. There are lots of modern twists in there that just... It's very refreshing, it's very interesting, it's a very different sort of a book. I've not read anything like this before. Another thing to note is that it's an ensemble cast, there are a lot of characters in it, and it's not a particularly long book, but it really does get you up to speed with them. You know them very quickly, very easily. It doesn't take lots and lots of time to do that. It's just quick but naturalistic. It's just well done. It's well skilled on that sort of a one. And also the lead cast is all female, which is, I don't know, it just felt nice and refreshing and sort of western. It's a sort of, again, indigenous angle to it, so indigenous legends, but done nicely and with respect. It's just a really solid read. It's one of those where it leaves you guessing because it just does not pull a single punch at any point ever. It's just really, really brutal, actually. It's a real bloodbath, and it's not afraid to shy away from just being really nasty at points, and as a horror reader I love that. This is a great book. Top 3 for the year. I've probably said that for more than 3 books, but it's just that good. This is a 5 out of 5. I'll be watching this guy. And then we have the book I was convinced would be a chonker, but it's kind of not, actually. This is Shadowspark's 4th anthology. This is Dreamcore. There are a lot of writers in it, so we're not going to talk about everything. I will talk about a few favourites. There are quite a few of these. The important thing to note is the theme for this. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but it's dreams and nightmares. So Mariah Norris is in this anthology. If you watched last year's video, you know I really love Mariah's writing. She's done something very different this time. She did something very unexpected, from my point of view at least. She's written effectively a fantasy horror. Usually when you get someone that blends fantasy with horror, it tends to lean more one way or the other, or it ends up being dark fantasy with some horror elements, or horror with some supernatural stroke fantasy elements. This is basically a straight down the middle, and I've not come across that before. That was really interesting, and I thought it took a lot of skill, for one. But also, This one was just like genuinely harrowing, but that is one of the best stories of the anthology, and I mean easily. It's really, really good. Benjamin Langley's piece is The Fenman's Lament. And this is another historical horror but set way further back, sort of very different time period, and it sort of feels it, but without becoming laboured. So again, props to the writer, some serious skills on display here, because it's very easy to make old time periods slow and laboured and quite difficult to get through in terms of prose. That just doesn't happen here. It doesn't happen here at all. And it feels like an English folk tale. And to even those of us who are not familiar with English folklore, you really get that impression. The whole premise is centred around fishing up an eel with a human head. This isn't a real English folk thing. He just came up with this. That somehow just existed in his brain. And all of the other stuff that goes with it also somehow existed in his brain. And I do not understand it, and it's that classic Benjamin Langley thing of just, this is really creeping me out and also just really grossing me out. It's fantastic. 5 out of 5. I'm disgusted. I like it. Eric Avedissian is in this one as well, in a surprise to no one. And he's written this piece that's very, very modern, and it's all about sort of sleepwalking. It's called The Noctambulist. This is just a really fun story, because on the one hand you see where it's going, on the other you don't. It sort of plays into that whole idea of dreams and nightmares very literally, but also in a very surreal way, and it's very psychological, while the character is very much sane and very much aware of what's happening. It's very odd, and it's really good fun. It should be noted that there are several other really great stories in here. Ashley Anglin's Unpathed Waters, Undreamed Shores. Valerie Storm's The Shadow's Blight is also well worth a mention here. That one that really surprised me, and I really enjoyed that one. J.W. Warner's The Mark of the Dan Shoe, I hope I'm saying that right, was also just a really fun, again short and sweet read. There's also Cloudberries by Tom Reimer. It is also worth mentioning that I am published in this one, but even so, one story and 14 is a drop in the ocean. That's not going to sway my opinion, particularly in the sense that this is a great anthology. I enjoyed reading it. 5 out of 5. The next one on the list is another ebook. This is The Church of Skaton by Damien Casey. This is, I guess, straight horror, really. It's one of those books that is kind of odd to read. It's one of those where there are parts of it I really, really like, and parts of it I really, really don't. This is one of those books that knows exactly who its audience is and exactly who it's for. And if you are that audience, you will love it. This book is paced excellently. The pacing is great. The actual horror elements are great, and how sort of realistic some parts of it are, and how it does touch on uncomfortable topics, doesn't shy away from it, and it really does talk about these things and does it well. It's all good. Characters are great, but there are just two big issues for me, and this is just an I am not the target audience for this book thing. It's just too over the top for me. It's too big, it's too loud, it's too far beyond my suspension of disbelief. It's very heavy sort of retro vibes as well, very sort of 90s, early 2000s. And obviously I don't have a problem with people setting books in this sort of time period, but when a lot of it is kind of there for nostalgia plays, it starts to bother me. It's moments where you almost just get the sort of, oh yeah, this thing that everyone loved, that gets a mention, that gets a mention, that gets a mention. And it's one thing if it happens a few times, but when it's just every single time there's an opportunity for it, it starts to really get on my nerves. I have so much of a love-hate relationship with this book because the good parts are just so good, and then the parts that annoy me are just so annoying. It's really well written though, and if you like really over-the-top, really loud horror, and you like a bit of nostalgia, this is the perfect read for you. 3 out of 5 for me though. It's one of the books I was most hyped for coming out in 2025. This is Alyssa Larsang's Dance of Demons. This is the first in the Poison and Opium series. It's listed as Act 1 instead of Book 1. It's just because your main man, Daisuke, is so dramatic, and I think that's hilarious. Like, genuinely, I think that's just really funny, that's really clever. And it's also a sort of taste of the humour of the book, literally on the cover, so like, that's neat. It's got the fantasy elements, maybe a bit more so than Keeper Trilogy, but it's sort of hard to tell this early. But, I mean, it's still a very gritty story, it's still a very sort of human story. You've got your 2 main characters. I mean, I could think there were a couple of other POV characters, but Daisuke and Obito are running the show. They know they're running the show, and they're having a horrible time doing it. It's all very serious, very stark, very high stakes, but it also has a lot of humour, and it's not out of place. And I really appreciate that, and that's a really hard balance to strike. And it's one of those that's just written really nicely as well. It's one of those that's really made me want to draw one particular scene that I can't talk about because spoilers. So there's a camera into the villain and the villain's plans. And that's, I think, probably one of my favourite parts of this book, is seeing the villain behind the scenes. You know, usually I don't really love this in multi-POV, but what's sort of done here is not making the villain overly sympathetic. Like, yeah, there's some sympathy and all that, but she's still a terrible person, but she's also understandable. It's the sort of, I don't like you, I don't like your methods, but I can respect what you're doing and understand what you're doing, but I don't. It's quite uncomfortable at a point, actually, because you have such a big conflict between, I get this, and I get you, and I'm actually not sure I disagree with absolutely everything you're doing, but there's so much you're doing so wrong, and you're also just kind of a terrible person at a point as well, and you seem like you're really trying to blame this on everyone except you. Oh no, this book was one of the most hyped for 2025, for sure, and it lives up to it. This book is great. I'll be looking forward to the rest of the series. This next stretch is all ebooks, so we're on another tricky one here, for much the same reasons as before. All I am going to say about Through the Blur by Yolanda Svetsos, besides I am so sorry, I do not know how to pronounce your name, the only other thing I'm going to say is that, again, there are a couple of really cool elements here. How tarot is sort of replaced by playing cards is cool, and then how those playing cards are sort of used later on, particularly in the finale. That's really cool. 1 out of 5, and we move on to True Cult by Michael Bettendorf. This is an interesting one. This is a horror. It's also a lit RPG, and for what it's worth, that's the sort of modern term for a choose-your-own-adventure book. I haven't come across any of those in a sort of adult age category before, so that's pretty cool. I went through this book twice in the interest of that, because there was quite clearly another ending to find, so I did do that. Because that's the one thing, this book centres on a band for much of its page time, and the band's struggles to band's difficulties, and, you know, working with other band members and how difficult they can be, and all of the things they're doing. And all of that's great. And also sort of small town politics, it's a fair bit of a sort of small town horror type book as well. And small town politics, what goes on in small towns where, you know, some stuff just isn't tolerated, and other stuff that really shouldn't be tolerated just kind of is, and okay, apparently this is a big deal to you, but that really isn't, and what the heck, and all of that sort of stuff is done really well. I really enjoy that. I like the characters. There are two big problems with this book, though. The first would be some of the pacing is a bit off, and at some points the book does drag a bit because of that. The main problem I have with this book, though, is that there aren't that many choices. And for a lit RPG, for effectively a choose-your-own-adventure, there aren't that many choices that you get to make. Yeah, there are going to be points in a lit RPG where the paths converge and come together, but it happens a bit too much here. And also the main reason that I went to find the other ending is because the ending I got the first time was just... it didn't feel that satisfying to me. Like, the other ending was great, actually, but that sort of... again, it's a really difficult thing to do, and I get, as a game designer as well, the true ending has to be the best ending, but I don't think that... but having the other endings just not really work particularly well. There are a lot of really good things, there are a lot of things that are actually really quite disappointing. 3 out of 5, I guess. It's really harsh to give it any lower because there are a lot of really, really good points about this book. And if you get true ending first time, it's going to seem a lot better than if you don't, I think. This next book's really interesting. Bear Season by Gemma Fairclough. I hope I'm saying your name right. This I would class as creative non-fiction stroke true crime. And these are not genres that I would ever pick up off the shelf. I think badging it as horror is not necessarily incorrect, but doesn't feel accurate. So this is difficult because it is effectively a true story. As far as I'm aware, this is, trying to be as accurate to the true crime story as possible. So you get somewhat of a perspective of the main victim of the book, because she left some writings behind that were used. And then you get another section that's written from the main suspect, and that side of the story. It's quite a sort of unique structure in that way, I would think. Again, it's incredibly hard to say much about this because it's true crime and it's very short, so spoilers. I mean, at its heart, it's a tragedy as well. It's a very sad story and very mysterious, and there's a whole section at the end that's sort of theorising about what could have happened in the part that is the real mystery. But it's done so respectfully, it's done so nicely. I appreciate that it's there. It's one of those books where you do have to make your own mind up, and I like that too. I don't know that I'm sold on creative non-fiction, but this is one I really enjoyed. So this one gets a 5 out of 5 for me. And now we're on to a very strong book in the last paperback. E.C. Baldick's Poisoning the Well. It's the first in the Ungovernable series. Full disclosure, this is an ARC. I did do a full video on this for Adventures Elsewhere reviews, so I'm not going to go into tons of detail here because you've literally already heard it from me. This is, I guess it's urban fantasy, technically. It's a very modern, set in a slightly futuristic world. It's another one that follows a band, actually. It's the second one of these. So this book is just an absolute winner in the sense that you get these two very different main POV characters. It's a suspect in a murder case and the detective who's undercover in the suspect's band, which is a really, really fun concept, and, a lot of fun is had with this. But there's so much politics. There's a full-on political assassination in the early pages of this book. There's a lot of posturing, there's a lot of political debate around things that aren't comfortable, and there aren't good solutions, and again, it's realistic, it's gritty in that way, and I really like that. And what's interesting is seeing characters be very slowly, very slightly swayed. That I really like. That is fun. And it's done really well, really genuinely. This is just a really good book. Also, props for having a matte cover. Fantasy of the year. This book is amazing. and I can't wait to read the next one. 5 out of 5. We've still got a fair few books to go, even if we don't have any more paperbacks to go through. The next one is a really good book. This is A Spectre is Haunting Green Tree by Carson Winter. Again, I did do a full AER video on this one, so I'm not going to go into tons of detail. This is a small town horror, and it has the sort of final girl feel to it, with a very unlikely final girl, and just a very unusual friendship at the heart of it. And that's really fun, it's really unexpected, it's really twisty. The way scarecrows are used in this is horrifying. This book is terrifying. Genuinely, this book is straight up terrifying. That's the main thing I remember about it, is that this book scared the crap out of me. And it's pretty rare you say that as a seasoned horror reader. You know, this was an SSBA finalist with a very good reason. If You Will Speak for the Dead hadn't won, this would have been the book that I would have said would win. This book is amazing. It's also just really brutal as well. The punches are not pulled in this book. This one's ace. 5 out of 5. Watch this writer. We got another tricky one. This is Resistors. This is a survival horror. If you got nothing nice to say, don't say anything. We give it a 1. And we get on to The Scientist, the Spaceman, and the Stars Between Them by A.L. Davidson. This was billed to me as a horror primarily, and that did not help my read of it. This is not horror so much as it's sci-fi. This is a sci-fi horror, and it's heavy on the sci-fi side of it. I am not a sci-fi reader. These things did not help. Bear that in mind here. This book has a lot of really good things in it. The main characters are really good. And the main characters are a married couple, and their dynamic and how they handle all that. I really like that, actually. That's a lot of fun. A lot of the stuff that happens on planet surfaces, and a lot of the ways of sort of getting around places and how things are described and all of that. A lot of that's a lot of fun, actually, and the main villain, for 99% of the book, is a great character, and her interactions with the second main character I really like their dynamic and how all of that goes. The main issue I take with this book is that these characters are all clearly clever. I mean, they're scientists, they're astronauts, they're those sorts of people. They're clearly academically smart. That doesn't always go hand in hand with common sense and actual intelligence and all of that. But in this case, it does. Until it doesn't. There's some things where it's like, I know this is a horrible decision, but you really have to make it, and it's genuinely just dumb of you not to. I mean, this book from the beginning, it's not subtle. It has an eco message about, can we stop destroying the planet, please? But it's so unsubtle about this, and it really does get a mallet and bash you over the head with it at just about every given opportunity. It does just get to a point where it's really annoying. I know some people prefer these things to be pushed more and to be more explicit, but it's way over that line. And that's ultimately the reason this book is getting a 2 out of 5 from me. And it's such a shame because this book is beautifully written, the characters are great, and there are a lot of great things going on, but when the problems just stack up like that, they are really hard to look past. It is time for me to move to the second part of my reading tracker that is way more empty, and also way more ugly. I don't know what I was thinking when I did this. This is Be Nothinged by Alva Theo. How to categorise this one? Domestic horror, arguably small town horror. This book is weird. This book has some genuinely excellent body horror in it, and it has a lot of little story that has a lot of grit. It has some really interesting characters in it, so characters that you don't usually tend to see in fiction. And it has a really sort of interesting central idea and concept around it that's sort of the idea of what's in a name. Some of the ways that's done are quite clever. Others of them... This is another book I really wanted to like, in the sense that the body horror is genuinely excellent, and there's a lot of care taken with this book. This is a book that the author clearly really cared about. This is a passion project, without a doubt. This is something where the author was like, I care so deeply about each and every single one of these characters, and each and every single one of their lives, and each and every single one of the things they've ever done. And there are some points where that is absolutely excellent, where there are some truly excellent character dynamics and character moments and full circle moments, and how all these things tie together are second to none. In all of that care, in all this work done on all of these characters, and there's too much desperation to show every single part of it, it just gets to a point where it's just too much, where there are too many characters saying too many things. One of this book's greatest strengths is also its greatest weakness. The body horror is excellent, but there's too much of it. And this isn't in a skating way where it's too big, it's too loud, it's too much. It's more in a just, we've done this already. It does right at the end seem to shoot itself in the foot a bit with the main theme, but that might be me reading it wrong. But this book isn't long, but it dragged. The body horror does not help with that. There are some really good things, but this book is a 2. I'm sorry. I didn't love it. This next book, however, I did absolutely love. This next book, Book of the Year 2025, and it's not close. This is also the book I was most hyped for this year. It's been, I think it was announced in 2023 or something like that. And I've been just super hyped for this book ever since. It lives up to years of hype. It's just an absolutely stunning book. This is Aberration by Nick Ripley. This is a psychological horror, one of, if not my favourite genres. Again, I did do a full AER episode on this, so I'm not going to go into tons of detail. This is another one that is truly and utterly terrifying. This is almost definitely the scariest piece of horror media I've ever touched on. Night Clues 2 gave me nightmares for days. This is so much worse. It's so masterfully complicated and tangled. It genuinely feels like you're going insane reading it. You feel absolutely and utterly insane by like the halfway point, but it's addictive. You can't stop. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing given that a lot of the themes in the book reflect that. It's just, it's phenomenal how it's put together. It's a masterpiece of a book. If you read one horror book in your life, make it this one. This is a 5 out of 5, this is Book of the Year. I have a lot of feelings about this next one as well. This is From the Belly by Emmett Nahill. Again, I'm sorry with the names. It's sort of locked room horror. I guess it wouldn't be wrong to say that. It's horror set on a ship. Back in the old, whaling lamp oil days. Again, the horror in this book it's got that Benjamin Langley thing of just, this is disgusting, and that is the main part the horror comes from, that is just really, really gross. Yeah, the horror's really good. There's also a very slow burn romance between, I guess, effectively the main hero and somewhat of the main villain. There are a lot of villains in this book, though. And that's really engaging. For me, that was the most engaging part of the book. If Nahill ever writes a romance, I am buying it on spec. And the ship's captain was also a really good character, and his sort of slow descent into madness was really fun to watch. But, and this is a big but, the colourful characters and great characters only extend so far. But also, a lot of the characters do bleed together a little bit. I don't think it helps that a lot of characters are together in scenes, like almost constantly. There is a bit of a pacing problem at points as well. There are points where it drags, but I do think that this book is somewhat doomed by design, in the sense that it's too much of a locked room without enough... It's a locked room without enough objects in it. I've read a horror book that's set on a ship before. I'm not saying it's derivative, it's very much... It's not that at all. But I feel like there's only so much you can do. Genuinely, I would love to be proven wrong because I don't like to believe things like this. But once, having read the other ship-based horror, this just... It almost felt like a bit like following a beat sheet. Yeah, that was just kind of disappointing. There's not much more to cling on to. Maybe I'm being harsh on this one, but I mean, if I don't enjoy it, I'll be disingenuous to say that I did. This one's a 2, sorry. Our penultimate read is a real test of how badly I speak Spanish. This is Sundown in San Ojuela by M.M. Olivas. It's somewhat of a small-town horror, and it's pretty solidly a small-town horror. But it's a very different sort of small-town horror. There's a lot of local legend, local myth, a lot of history bleeds into this one, a lot of indigenous myth. It's hard, this is one of those books that's really hard to talk about without spoilers. But there's just a lot in this book, and it's a lot of fun, and again some real mastery of just wordcraft here, actually. You get all of the different POV types. You get third person, you get first person, and you get a good old dose of second person. And they're all done really, really well, and that's really nice to see, actually. To see not only the variety, but they're all done really well. Impressive. Some serious props to the writer on that one. Very, very impressive. And they're all also equally engaging and equally as effective in the horror, which is also a real skill, because there are some that are much easier to write horror in than others. One thing I really do like, though, is this sort of... the idea of being the second generation. Not in an immigrant sense, but in a sort of... we won't explain our own history, our own legends, we won't teach you our own language, so that you appear less different than other people, so you're more of a standard person in this country. And how, one, that doesn't work, and the sorts of harms that can do, actually, and how actively unhelpful that is for our protagonists, trying to solve the mystery, figure out what's going on, beat the person who is older who does know all of the things. That was a whole really interesting set of things to read about, and I really enjoyed that. And I really recommend this book just for that alone, and the skill of the writing. This book is excellent. This is a 5 out of 5 for sure. And last, but certainly not least, we have another ARC. This is The Dreamwalker by Alethea Lyons. This is a difficult one to categorise. I'm going to call this one urban fantasy. I don't know if that's technically right, but that's what I'm going with. This is, and again, full disclosure on this one, not only is it an ARC, but this is book 3 of a series that I am jumping into cold. You know, the author said that this would be fine to do, and there is a previously on section to sort of help you catch up. So that's all there. You know, full disclosure on that, because I'm sure there are points where that did affect things. So, you know, pinch of salt required on this one as well. Again, it's hard to say much about this one without spoilers, being first and foremost book 3 of a series, but also it's quite... there's a lot of foreshadowing in this book that's done really nicely. Primarily what I would say about this is a real love letter to dreams and music and art. So that's a winner. And as it's seeing the way that all of these things are explored, the way these things are described, like the way dreams are described and used, that's just brilliant. I absolutely love the way that's done, props to the writer. And the characters are really, really good. A lot of the characters are they're just very lovable as well. And there is, you know, the romance in this book is absolutely stellar, second to none. I like that there wasn't too much time spent on a lot of the sort of more magical elements. Like, there was enough, but there wasn't too much, because this is something that I run into a lot in fantasy books, and I'm really glad that that wasn't the case here. That did lead to a few moments being passed over a bit too quickly for my liking, but maybe that's a personal preference thing. And I will say, I did have a prediction very early on about what the ending would be, because I thought, oh yeah, okay, I see this one coming. And I very much did not see that coming, and that was proven wrong by halfway, so that was nice, that was refreshing. Again, it's hard to talk about this book too much without getting into spoilers. There were a lot of things I really, really liked. There were a few things that did bug me. There were points that were a bit too fantasy for me, but to be honest, that's not that hard to hit. So this one gets a 4.5. It's one of those where I didn't love it enough to call it a 5, and I didn't find enough wrong to call it a 4. It's sort of wrong to call it either of those, so we're breaking the system. It's the end of the video, so who cares if the system's broken now, am I right? So if you stuck around to the end of this, well done. A lot of books in this one. We'll see what that looks like next year, whether there'll be more, whether there'll be fewer. I don't set hard reading goals. My main thing is just that I want to read as much as possible, and I want to read good books, and I'm pretty confident 2026 has some great books to bring, and I'm really excited for where that's going to go. I hope you found some new books to read and enjoy. I've taken up quite enough of your time, so I will let you go. And you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you round about this point next year for Reads of 2026.